anyway. That is the time. Yes.
Mr. Deputy
Only
Chairman,
5 minutes.
Mr. Deputy Chairman, sir, every budget gets its fair share of bouquets and brickbats. I stand
Next time I'll
neither to
give
give bouquets nor
Next
brickbats.
time I'll give you time.
But I would like to just seek 4 specific clarifications from the Finance Minister after having gone through the report of the budget and also the report of the 14th Finance Commission, which provides the anchor for this budget. So the key point in this budget is the 42% figure. The aggregate resources to the states have not increased, but qualitatively, the proportion of untied funds to the states has gone up from 32% to 42%. Quantitatively, the states have not gained. Qualitatively, they have gained because of the 42% recommendation of the Finance Commission. So it has been a practice all along from the first Finance Commission that governments accept the award of the Finance Commissions, and this government has also accepted the award. Previous Finance Commissions have had dissent notes. This commission has also had a dissent note, but nevertheless the government has chosen to accept the 42% figure. So this is welcome because it increases the proportion of untied funds to the states, and even the difference between what the dissent note was and what the recommendation is was a difference between 38% and 42%. So I have no quibble with the 42% figure. But sir, underlying the entire budget is an assumption that the shortfall in the central plan assistance for key programs will be made up by spending by the states. So this assumption we can argue, we can quarrel, but the truth of this assumption will only be known 1 year from now or 2 years from now. So the question that I would like to ask the Honorable Finance Minister, will he consider putting in place some institutional arrangement for the transition period to ensure that the key programs do not get shortchanged because of lack of allocations by the state? So these programs are the Rajya Krishi Vikas Yojana, the ICDS, the midday meal scheme, the National Rural Health Mission, and a variety of programs in the social sectors. So we know the political economy of public expenditure. The political economy of public expenditure is contractor driven. We know this. And I say this with a full sense of authority and responsibility that the last 60 years, social sectors have tended to get lesser importance in state budgets, and irrigation, which is very good, and PWD, which is very good, gets the priority in the state budgets. In fact, barring Kerala, I hope I'll give 1 minute more for mentioning Kerala. Barring Kerala and Tamil Nadu, very few states have seen it fit to give priority for social sector expenditures in their budgets. So my request to the Honorable Finance Minister is that it's a heroic assumption. We hope that this assumption will be proved right, but would he consider putting in place some institutional arrangement of mid-year review to ensure that the key programs for which the central plan assistance has been reduced, in the expectation that the states will pick up that expenditure, that shortfall will not materialize and these programs would actually be fully protected. In fact, sir, in the documents that have been circulated with the budget, I noticed that there is an acceptance of the fact that central plan assistance has gone down, and there is a footnote which says that the central plan assistance has gone down, but the total expenditure will not go down because the states will pick up the slack. So there is a recognition by the Finance Minister that the slack, which has been criticized across the board by everybody who has spoken, would be picked up by the states. I would request the Honorable Finance Minister to reassure the House that there would be some review mechanism in the Finance Ministry. Now that the Planning Commission has been abolished, there would be some review mechanism jointly between the successor organization and the Finance Ministry to ensure that these shortfalls do not materialize, and if they become imminent, the central plan assistance would actually be increased. So my second issue relates to the health sector. The health sector. There has been a very substantial reduction in the central plan allocation for health. in the assumption that the states will pick up the expenditure on health. Again, it's an assumption we can argue, but it's an assumption that has been made. Sir, the other assumption is what I have a problem with. The assumption in the finance minister's speech is that insurance will be a key driver of health provision. I would request the Honorable Finance Minister to be a little cautious, because all the evidence in India suggests that even after the introduction of health insurance, out-of-pocket expenditure on health has not come down. And the provision of insurance provides an inbuilt incentive for secondary and tertiary health care, whereas our priority in India is to expand primary health care. So I would request the Honorable Finance Minister, we agree that insurance has a role to play, particularly in the organized sector, but insurance cannot be the driver of primary health care in this country, and that has to depend on public allocations, hopefully by the states. But if the states are not forthcoming, which is what the experience has been, the center will have to step in sooner rather than later. So, two very quick points. Thirdly, I would request the Honorable Finance Minister to please reassure us on the integrity of the statistical system on which we are basing all our numbers. So don't take my word for it. Your own Chief Economic Advisor has raised serious questions on the revised numbers for GDP. Numbers have to change, sir. The basis of computation changes once every 5 years. It's inevitable. But there are serious questions on the reliability of these numbers. Indian numbers have never been suspected. Chinese numbers have always been suspected. Indian numbers have never been suspected. But for the first time, I am reading responsible academic work which says that the integrity and robustness of the new GDP numbers is suspect. I would request the Honorable Finance Minister to please ensure that the new numbers are in fact follow the canons of integrity and reliability. Finally, sir, GST. While the Finance Minister has made much of the GST, we welcome the change in attitude of the ruling party. The Finance Minister is on record as having accused the Congress party of obstructionism. I would just say very humbly, sir, that the Finance Minister and his party single-handedly obstructed the introduction of GST in the last 5 years.
Okay, fine.
Single-handedly, it was the Prime Minister's objection when he was Chief Minister of Gujarat that held back the introduction of GST, for which a lot of homework had already been done. We welcome the introduction of GST. We are committed to the introduction of GST, and we welcome the change in attitude of the Finance Minister and his party, that they, who were obstructionist for 5 years, have suddenly found it necessary to see GST as a major revolution in fiscal management. So finally, I would just say this, sir. Finally, I would just say this.
Only one final.
Sir, no, just because of my Kerala, you have to give me 1 point, sir. Because of Kerala. Sir, finally, I would just say this. So the fiscal architecture has changed with this budget. You can't compare this budget with previous budgets. You don't have a thing called the annual plan anymore. You can't compare plan expenditure with plan expenditure. So the fiscal architecture has changed, and it was crying out for some change. But I think, sir, the real challenge is how do you make the transition? Nobody can be against giving more powers to the states. Nobody can be against giving more untied funds to the states. But I would like to remind the Honorable Finance Minister that this idea of a single divisible pool is not new. It goes back to 1997. In 1997, the single divisible pool was instituted with a 29% share. You have increased to 42%. We welcome it, but we would like you to please be a little careful in the transition period, because that is where I suspect, that is where I see a lot of problems arising in agriculture, in health, in education, in women and child development, and in nutrition, which have been highlighted by